The week after the ordeals and the exams had been sat, Molly asked Hunter if he was still going to take her to the ball. It had completely slipped Hunter's mind, but it rapidly came back into his mind. It was this Saturday. Hunter arranged a time to pick Molly up. Hunter had to go to the suit shop and hire a tuxedo for the night. On Saturday, he went and recovered the cart from Eden. Moxy was back from BP's, having put a reasonable dent in BP's hay pile. On Saturday, he cleaned up the cart and polished it. Jack helped him to fit a small parasol roof to it. Jack was going to the ball as well. It seemed that Jack and Juliet Flower had struck up a bit of a friendship. She had a small car and was picking him up. Hunter's mum helped him to decorate the cart with floral bunches of greenery. Moxy was freshly brushed and gleaming. He had a garland all of his own and looked magnificent. The cart had a red rear light, and Hunter rigged up a headlamp to the front on Moxy, his own LED light. He had a bunch of wild flowers he picked, and his mum had made into a beautiful flower arrangement. She thought how strange it was. If she had to pick, she would have picked Hunter to be going with Juliet and Jack with Molly. Well, how wrong I am, she thought, and off Hunter went, up to the Glockies to collect Molly. She didn't know he was coming on Moxy. The silent man was on guard duty at Glocky's gate and let him through. Molly looked resplendent. The dress she had found in the second-hand shop, never worn, and it fitted her perfectly. Marissa had loaned her a string of pearls. Hunter helped her into her seat on the cart and gave her the flowers. She put them in the holder between the seats. Glocky gave Hunter strict instructions to have the young lady back by midnight. Molly was feeling very special. They made their way to the school on the back tracks and parked Moxy on the edge of the field. Molly had the tickets. They saw Jack and Juliet go on ahead of them into the hall. As you came through the foyer, there was a ticket collector at a desk who gave you a stamp. The principal was just inside the door. There was a small group of people milling about in the foyer. One of them was Stan. When Molly got to the desk, Stan, who recognised them from the moment they walked in the entrance, called out, "He can't come in here." The principal looked up from his chatting to the other staff members in the foyer and moved over. He agreed with Stan. He would have agreed with anything Stan said. With Henry gone, Stan was in charge of Maguire's considerable business interests. There were administrators, but ultimately they carried out Stan's wishes. Maguire had legal documents for justice. Such a situation as now existed. The principal had received a most generous donation to the school and a healthy envelope for himself. Stan was the dux of the school, and his exam marks miraculously the highest in the school. He had admission to the top law university for the next year. The principal walked forward, put out his arm, blocking Hunter, and said, "You can't come in here." Stan walked forward and offered his arm to Molly, in a voice so syrup-sweet you could ice a cake with it, said, "You can come in. No need for you to miss out on the fun." Hunter didn't want to cause a scene and spoil the night, even though it already seemed spoiled. Before he could say or do anything, Molly spun around, took Hunter's arm and said, "Take me away from this snake pit, will you?" And they left. They walked back to the cart, and Hunter had come up with a plan. Be blowed if the night was going to be wasted. Molly told him she was glad he hadn't reacted. They left through the car park in front of the foyer. Some of the other ball-goers had come out, having heard there was an altercation. Stan was standing outside, telling a group of others how he had kicked Hunter out. As they trotted past, looking spectacular, Moxy turned his head and did a Moxy snort, and a piece of horse snot hit Stan on his shoulder. Neither Hunter or Molly ever came back to the school again. Hunter took them down to the waterfront boulevard. The night was calm and city lights reflected from the water. Ferry boats plied their trade to the north shore in the distance. There were a few tourists about, and some of them asked if they could take photos of them. The picture ended up on the cover of a major fashion magazine. Hunter parked up in a car park that ran right to the water's edge. The car park was empty. They were sitting there chatting when a sound like thunder rumbling could be heard. A bunch of hot rods rolled into the car park. They parked along the front on either side of Moxy. Moxy snorted and shook his head and mane as if to say, "They think they're powerful, look at me." Some of the hot rodders had a talk to Hunter and Molly. They decided that a night like this, kicked out of the ball before they even had a dance, that needs to be corrected. They parked their rods in a big circle and left the running lights on. The music cranked up and they danced. Hunter and Molly were terrible dancers, but it was fun. A couple of the hot rodders were really good rock and roll dancers. They put an impromptu show on. It was time to move on. Getting late, and Hunter didn't want to be late. Back to Glocky's. At the far end of the boulevard was a takeaway. They bought burgers and ate them as they travelled back to Glocky's. It was 11:55 when Hunter got back to Glocky's doorstep. Molly kissed him on the cheek, the one opposite that she'd kissed the last time, and thanked Hunter for the best night in her life. She flew up the stairs and through the door on the strike of midnight. As Hunter left the Glockies, the silent man stopped him and said, "You did real good the other night. Getting us through that bush without those guys catching us was real good." He had one arm in a sling. The bullet had broken a bone. Hunter was sure he knew who the man was. He'd seen a similar picture on the internet of a decorated war hero. The man had gone back into the guard hut before Hunter could reply. Both Jack and Hunter got back to the stables about the same time and lay in bed. They could talk over the room divider. Jack told Hunter that Stan had been furious about the horse snot. Lots of people commented out of Stan's hearing that it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. The next day dawned, and Smith came over and did his weekly inspection to make sure the lads kept the place tidy. It was okay. He put an invite on the table for them to look at later. Jack went into the shipyards in the morning for the Saturday overtime. Glasgow had recovered from the bank loan repayment. It had been an old loan and he should have paid it off earlier. Once the demand came through, and he only had 14 days, he went in and cashed in a large pile of non-ferrous scrap metal that the shipyard had, and the loan was paid off. When Jack was home for the afternoon, they got the old car out and drove it around in the paddock. Molly turned up. She wanted to learn how to drive and get her licence as well. The first couple of times she stalled the car, but before long she was changing gears and driving around the paddock. Juliet, who had heard about the activities, turned up and had a drive around the paddock. She could do quite good slides. They all had the car sliding by the end of the afternoon. Smith came out and put up some markers and told them to park in between them. That was it. The rest of the day, what was left of it, they had parking competitions. Hunter's mum saw what fun they were having and had Smith light the barbecue. Smith told them he'd shouted them all a couple of lessons with Ace's driving lessons. He'd made the call while they were drifting the old car. "Better make sure you know the road code," he told them. Hunter's mum asked if she could have a chat with Molly alone in the kitchen. Molly's heart sank. It sounded kind of official. Was she about to be ostracised as the not good enough for my son orphan girl? Mrs. Joe Gunter sat down on a bar stool at the kitchen table and motioned for Molly to do the same. Coming up very soon was picnic day. Just before picnic day, Smith was putting on a concert. The proceeds were for charity. When Smith did something for charity, all the proceeds went to charity. None of the other artists got paid, not a penny for their costs. Two very big names in music would be there. Molly thought Smith was one of the biggest names she knew in classical music and wondered who these others were. Mrs. Joe Gunter was saying that she was going to cater for the event. Would Molly like to help her? Molly felt some trepidation about the importance of such an important event, but put that aside and said yes. Mrs. Joe Gunter asked her to keep it in confidence. Molly was glad it wasn't about what she had thought, and admonished herself for such worries. Glocky turned up and picked up Molly. Well, Glocky, he was only the passenger as usual. Molly told him she could ask the boys if he could have a drive of the car they'd been in all afternoon. Marissa told Molly that Glocky's temperament changed the moment he got behind a wheel, just like that famous cartoon. Hunter and Jack went back to the stable, and there was the envelope. There were 2 invites in it. Jack and a partner were invited to attend a charity concert this coming weekend with an RSVP. Hunter's was slightly different. He was invited to work at a concert this coming weekend, RSVP. Hunter wondered why Jack got an invite and he got a night's work. He had attended some of Smith's concerts before as a child and knew they would be a full-on affair. He didn't know why Smith had arranged things this way, and decided he didn't have to know. He did ask Smith if Molly could come, but Smith told him he didn't want Hunter getting distracted.